Thousands of families are quietly going broke trying to keep their parents out of a nursing home. But what if I told you that there was a way to cut your costs by as much as 80%? In this video, I'm going to show you 2 strategies that families are using to save tens of thousands of dollars every year. Plus, I'll explain why the government actually wants to pay you to keep your parents in their home. And I'll explain the document that you need in order to unlock that funding. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ethan Carbo, and I love helping families learn about caregiving. It's what I'm totally passionate about. My goal for this channel is to help you by giving you good information so that you can make good decisions for your family. Okay, let's talk about a strategy that families are using to save upwards of 80% on their parents' care. Now, it starts with a big misunderstanding. A lot of families believe that in order to keep their parents safe and in their home, they need to get 24/7 care. They need to hire a caregiver to be with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the problem with that is that it's super expensive. According to a recent cost of care survey, hiring 24/7 care from an agency at the median rate of $33 an hour costs an average of $288,000 per year. Now that's just crazy. For reference, high-end nursing facilities that offer private rooms cost an average of $116,000 per year, so less than half. $288,000 is basically impossible for most families, at least not in the long term. But the problem is that you have all these care agencies that are guilt-tripping people into believing that the only way to keep their parents safe is by hiring 24/7 care. But you gotta remember that these are for-profit companies that are incentivized to sell you as much care as possible. So they're pushing 24/7 care not because it's a necessity, but because it's expensive. What care agencies don't want you to know is that for most seniors, they only need supervision during the day and some way of helping them during the night if there's an emergency. Now, this doesn't need to be someone watching them while they're asleep. It can be a live-in caregiver or even technology, both of which are a fraction of the cost. It of course depends on the situation and how much help your parent actually needs. But if you really want to save money so that you can actually afford to keep your parent in their home for the long term, one of the very best things that you can do is hire a live-in caregiver. Here's why. When you hire a care agency at $33 an hour, there's 2 things that you need to keep in mind. The first is that you are essentially hiring and paying 3 full-time positions. You've got the morning shift, the afternoon shift, and the night shift, all that you've got to pay for. The second thing that you got to keep in mind is that of that $33, only about 15 to 17 of those dollars go to the actual caregivers. Where does the rest of it go? It goes to their marketing and their overhead. So if you can cut out those middlemen, you're already saving. Now, compare this to if you hire your own live-in caregiver. This is a strategy that my dad did for his parents, and it worked out great. They were able to save tens of thousands, honestly, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of my grandparents' need for care. They were able to hire a caregiver. They were living in the house. They were able to give the caregiver a generous raise compared to what they would be making at an agency, and they were still able to cut their costs dramatically. Now, the other benefit of this was that because they were a live-in, they could also add in room and board to the salary. So they were able to cut the costs even more, staying way far away from anywhere close to that $288,000 that is the industry standard. Here's what the math looks like. If you hire a 24/7 agency at $33 an hour, that's 24 hours in a day, times 7 days a week, times 52 weeks in a year, times that $33 rate. That's how the survey got that $288,000 number that we're talking about. Now, if you hire a caregiver directly at maybe $25 an hour so that they're already making a big raise compared to what they would be making at an agency, so they'll be happy. You have the same number of hours in a year, but already on paper, you're saving $70,000 per year. Now, I emphasize on paper there because there are no caregivers out there that are charging this much money. In fact, if you look at the high end of what a live-in caregiver might charge you, we're looking at about $54,000 per year. So even if we use the high end, we are getting 24/7 care with someone in the home at an 80% discount compared to what an agency would charge you. Now, if you're not used to hiring people, it might sound complicated to hire your own caregiver. I can assure you it's not. There's just a little bit of setup that's involved and a little bit of maintenance involved. But for these kinds of savings, it's actually totally worth it for you. Now, if you want me to make a video on the step-by-step process of how to actually implement this, let me know in the comments and I'll walk you through it. But let's say that you don't want to hire a live-in caregiver or that you don't want to manage hiring a caregiver yourself. That's totally fine. There's a second alternative method that is super simple to implement. In fact, families are using this hybrid strategy to save 50% or more on their care costs. What I'm specifically talking about is utilizing adult daycare and technology. Now, the way I see it is we're trying to solve how to take care of your parents during 3 separate 8-hour shifts. For the first 8-hour shift, people are sending their parents to adult daycare. Now, these are community-based systems that offer meals and socialization and medical supervision for about 8 hours a day. Now, the great thing about these is that the median price nationwide is about $100 per day. So, if you get your parents plugged into one of these, you're effectively buying 40 hours worth of care for $500 a week, which is a steal. The second shift is the afternoon shift, and for this, you would just hire a normal caregiving agency. Now, these guys are expensive. We've been talking about how the median rate is $33. So our goal is to use these guys as little as possible because they're so expensive. But for the third shift, that's where we can really start saving. Technology can be a great way to save money, but because it's your parents' safety on the line, you want to make sure that you're buying the right thing. So while there's a lot of things that you can consider, there are 3 major things that I would make sure that you nail in order to make sure that this actually works for you. First, you want to make sure that you have a way of monitoring their health, and depending on the situation, make sure that they're not wandering out of the house. Now, the best way to do this is motion sensors. But these aren't just your normal security motion sensors that you might find in your own house. No, these are actually pretty sophisticated. What you do is you stick them on walls, and then over the course of a week or a month, they will watch your parent and learn their normal routine. That way, if anything happens outside of the normal routine, they will send you a message. So it's pretty cool. Now, these things are about $200, I would guess, and then the ongoing subscription is about $50. Second, you would want to install passive radar systems. Now, I know that sounds like fighter jet equipment, but these are consumer products and they are really cool. They use radio waves to map out a room and watch your parent, but without the invasiveness of a camera. The advantage of that is that not only does it maintain privacy, but it also means that it can see your parent and make sure that they're not falling even in pitch black or even in a steamy shower. So pretty neat. If anything bad does happen, the system will recognize it and it'll dial for help. It'll be as fast or even faster than a human aid. Now, the costs of these can vary widely. There's some that are a couple $100, some that are a couple $1,000, and the subscription is just as varied. So, passive radar system is definitely a high recommendation, but do some shopping and find out what works best for you. Third, you would use smaller devices like automated smart locks and stove shutoff devices to protect against careless acts and forgetfulness. Now, the good thing about these kinds of devices is that they're pretty affordable and typically don't have any ongoing fees, but they're really good at protecting your parents from, well, I guess basically themselves. And that's not a dig at them because really, honestly, I could probably use some of these devices in my own home as well. There are a lot of other things that you could consider and a lot of other great tech products that you could buy, but these are the ones that I would recommend that you consider thinking about first. Now, of course, there are some upfront costs with this, but once everything is bought, your monthly costs are probably only about $100 per month, and that's pretty good. So I hope this shows that if you're able to leverage technology, you can cover this third 8-hour shift for pennies on the dollar. So if you tally it all up, here's what that looks like. First, you would take your parent to the adult daycare and you would cover that first 8-hour shift. You're getting 40 hours of care per week at $500 per week. That's pretty good. Second, you got the second shift. That's the normal care agency. You're going for them at maybe that $33 range. So $33 per hour, that's $1,320 per week. That number could be a lot less if you decided to hire your own caregiver for that, but let's just say you wanted to go with just an agency, and that's totally fine. So we'll keep that. And then the overnight shift, that's where we use technology, and let's say our average cost per week is only about $20 for that third 8-hour shift. So also pretty good. It works while you sleep, really great. Lastly, we got to remember that we also have to cover for the weekends. So if we take out the adult daycare possibility, because those are mostly only 5 days per week, we're looking at 16 hours of care per day for 2 days. And you multiply that by $33, again, going with an agency, we're looking at another $1,056 to cover the weekend. Using this model, even if we hire an expensive care agency for that second shift and for the weekends, our total cost is only about $150,000. And that is pretty good. It's about a 50% discount compared to if you had just gone with the care agency's recommendation for 27 care through their agency. Those savings are pretty great. But what would make this even better is if the government were willing to help us cover some of those costs. And in some situations, they actually want to. Here's why. According to data from the Kaiser Family Foundation, Medicaid pays about $47,000 per year to keep someone in a nursing facility. Now, compare that to how much they pay if they keep them in their own home. It's only about $36,000 per year. So at an $11,000 discount per person per year, it makes sense why the government would want to help you keep your parent in their own home. To make this happen, the government created something called a Home and Community-Based Services Waiver. Now, if your parent qualifies for Medicaid, this could be a great resource for you. Basically, it takes the money that would be going into a nursing facility and puts it into your parent's home instead. This can be used for all sorts of things like hiring a home health aide or installing a wheelchair ramp, or yes, even taking your parent to that adult daycare that we were just talking about. But unfortunately, there are two catches to this. The first is that in order to get this money, you have to qualify for it. Now, there's something called an institutional level of care assessment, and that's what your state's Medicaid agency will use to look at your parent's medical data. Once they look at this data, they'll have to basically be able to prove that without this waiver, they would have no other choice than to put your parent in a nursing facility. So if you want to use this strategy, you would have to contact your state's Department of Aging or your state's Department of Health and Human Services to request an institutional level of care assessment. The second catch is that unlike traditional nursing home placement, a lot of states have put a hard cap on how many people can have this waiver at a time. Now, of course, the problem with that is that this is a great program that a lot of people want, but only so many people can have it. So there are long wait lists. So if this is something that you think that you want for your parent or that your parent might want for themselves, then I would recommend getting on that wait list and applying as soon as possible. But this is a really great system that could be great for your family and help cut costs even further. Knowing how to pay for your parents' care can be really challenging and super stressful. I mean, you're basically being asked to make six-figure decisions on behalf of someone else, and most of us have never been trained how to do any of that. So I just want to say that by being here and by researching this on their behalf, that is just really great of you. You're doing a great job. Please do not lose hope. You are truly being a hero to your parents when they need it most, and that is worth celebrating. If you found this video helpful, I have one request of you. Please share this video with someone else who might find it useful. It really helps out them, it could save them a lot of money, and it really helps out the channel. Now, all these savings that we got in this video are great, but they might not actually matter at all if you can't access your parents' funds when you need them. So click this video on the screen where I explain why your parents' will might not be enough to save you in this situation. My name is Ethan Carbo. Thanks for watching. Click this video and I'll see you there.